Welcome to the Finance Marketing Podcast, a show that empowers finance professionals to market their businesses in ways that feel good and actually achieve results. I'm your host, Hillary. I've been working with folks in financial services to develop marketing strategies that work and create results-oriented marketing content since 2020. And I've learned a lot about what works in finance marketing, what doesn't work, and where financial services pros get stuck. Join us each Friday as we explore real, effective ways to market your finance business and connect with folks who truly embody your ideal clients. In today's episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast, I am thrilled to welcome Khara Crosthwaite-Brendel, a licensed mental health professional and financial therapist who specializes in serving other therapists. Khara's work is deeply impactful. She helps colleagues turn their pain points into possibilities, addressing tough topics like leadership trauma, client suicide, and financial stress in private practice. Her digital workbook, Financial Therapy at Your Fingertips, offers a starting point for those looking to begin their money healing journey with 6 practical exercises. Now, Khara and I initially connected on LinkedIn, and we were both delighted to discover during this conversation that you're about to listen to that we live just 10 or 15 minutes away from each other. So since recording this episode, we've had the pleasure of meeting in person a couple of times. We've had a couple of play dates with our 2-year-olds at our local library and parks, and just an absolute joy to make an offline connection like this. So in this episode, Khara shares her insights on how storytelling can be a powerful tool in marketing, especially for financial professionals who are really passionate about building authentic connections with their clients. We're also diving into how the Enneagram can influence financial behavior, which is a really interesting part of her work, as well as the emotional aspects of marketing that a lot of people often really overlook or don't talk about. Now, Khara's approach to blending financial therapy with mental health provides a fresh perspective that's valuable for anyone in the financial services industry. So, without further ado, let's dive in. I'm so excited to welcome Khara to this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. Khara, how are you this morning?
So excited. Now that I know you live in Colorado, this is like a fun conversation to have.
This is so fun. Yes, before I hit the record button, Khara and I just randomly discovered we live about 10 to 15 minutes away from each other, which is so fun.
Wild.
So I'm excited to dive into all the things, Khara. Can we start with just a little introduction to you, who you are, what it is that you do?
Yeah. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, which I always like to disclaim because when I say all the things I do, people are like, oh my God, do you sleep? And I do. I definitely sleep. But I'm a mental health and financial therapist here in Colorado. I serve other therapists. That's my clientele now. And so that's been a journey. I used to work with small business owners, entrepreneurs, workaholics, perfectionists, all people I identify with. And have been in private practice for almost 15 years and a financial therapist for almost 4, I think. Time flies. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I've written 8 books, soon to publish 9th book, and I definitely still get 8 to 9 hours of sleep. So I'm going to say that to your audience.
I love that. As a fellow, and this is something else we discussed, as a fellow mom of a 2-year-old and being able to get 8 to 9 hours of sleep, because I do as well, I think is so important for our mental health.
So important. I love that. Like, it's not just me that can prove this is possible. It also really depends on your child's personality and routines. Totally. But like, yes, very grateful.
Yes, very, very grateful. I'm actually about to have my second in a month or 2 here.
Oh my gosh. Congrats.
And I'm nervous that she's not going to be as good of a sleeper.
Not at first, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So Khara, you mentioned now you serve therapists. When did you make a conscious kind of niche change, or what happened as you started to narrow down?
Yeah, so I went through my first bout of professional burnout in about 2016 to 2018. Took about 2 years to recognize it for what it was, which then led to a TEDx talk on the burden of busyness. So I did that in 2021. But in 2018, as I was recovering from burnout, colleagues started asking me questions of like, what was this? How did you handle this? How do you still get so much done? What does work-life harmony look like? So I think at that point, even though it wasn't public facing, I started working with colleagues a lot. And then I really just started to embrace that in my marketing, probably in 2021, to be like, this are the people I want to work with. These are the people I talk to, I think about, my lived experience resonates. So about 2021 to now, I've been working with therapists almost exclusively.
And has that shift resulted in a better work-life harmony for you, or what's that experience been like?
Yeah, I mean, therapists, I mean, we all have our stuff. We're still humans. But I think because I'm mostly a consultant and I do groups and different things, it's more of a quick touch, give them the possibilities that help them, and then they're off and running. So it feels very different than the mental health clients I was serving. I had clients on average 2 to 5 years. And
Mm.
so the relationship dynamic looks different. The duration of how much time we spend together is different. And the needs are different. I mean, there's still trauma, there's still burnout, but it's not the same emotional impact for me as a consultant.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine that's kind of a breath of fresh air a little bit
Yeah,
to have a little bit of distance.
definitely.
Uh, well, I know that you also do a lot of work at the intersection between the Enneagram and money as well. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I discovered the Enneagram professionally probably in around 2017. Went to a couple trainings here in Colorado, and it just really resonated because it's relational. It's about how you relate to others. And then I would say in 2022, I started having conversations about the Enneagram and money because that was my new world of being a financial therapist. It was something I was talking about a lot, was money. And I had this light bulb moment where I was like, wait, the Enneagram is relational. Financial therapists, our relationship is all about money. Like that's what we do with clients is we help them have a healthy relationship with money. And so for me, it just felt like a really easy parallel between mental health and finances to be like, let's talk about your relationship with money. And Enneagram is a part of that. So
Mm.
when I describe that to people, they're like, oh, that tracks. Like how we relate to money might be how we relate to people, especially from like anxiety avoidance and some other cool things with attachment. So I wrote a blog about the Enneagram and money and said, here are the 9 types. Here's what I'm noticing. And people just like kind of just blew up. And people were like, wait, I feel so seen. I didn't realize that was something people were tracking. And so at that point, I knew I probably needed to write a book about it because I'm addicted to writing.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is a book somewhere in my future. And then I met an Enneagram coach who went even deeper into subtypes and all the things I didn't have awareness around. And we got a book deal, and we have a book called Your Enneagram and Money coming out hopefully early 2025. So that's kind
Wow.
of the backstory of how this came to be, but it's super fun. I'm definitely wanting to go deep into that with you.
Oh, I'm so excited for the book to come out. And I have to ask, is the blog still live? Is it still
Yes,
okay?
we can give people a teaser. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna make sure to link to that in the show notes because that sounds fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you think you could take, one example, maybe either your Enneagram and what that means about your relationship with money, or I can share my Enneagram and you can kind of,
How about both? Yeah.
let's do both. Yeah, let's wherever you want to start.
Yeah, I'll definitely put myself on the chopping block first. So, probably not surprising to your listeners, I'm an Enneagram type 3, which is an achiever, which means that I like to produce, I like to create. I'm very much about things that I can do with my career. I'm an Enneagram 3 wing 2, which means I still have that helper 2ness to me, which means that I make a good therapist, but I also make a really good consultant.
Mhm.
Of I can help people figure out what they want to do with their lives because that's what I enjoy is creating. And so, from the Enneagram and money perspective, 3s, we're most likely to be workaholics because our worth is wrapped up in our net worth and what we make for a living. And so, at my most unhealthy, that burnout of 2016 to 2018, I was working all the time. I was working 16-hour days. My spouse sat me down once and said, I see you 7 hours a week. And that
Mm,
for me was the light bulb of I need this to be different.
mm,
Because at that point, I was just chugging along, thinking I was fine. Nothing was fine. No surprise. Nothing was fine. Health wasn't fine. Finances weren't fine. Relationship wasn't fine. But for Enneagram 3s, we're more likely to be workaholics because we're looking for kind of that next goalpost. What am
mm,
I wanting to make? How much do I want to save? How much do I want in retirement? And so that goalpost keeps moving, which is part of the problem. So we
mm.
kind of have a core belief of more money would make us happier. And then we're pursuing that money with projects, new opportunities, new jobs, etc. So calling out my own growth edge as well as my colleagues who are 3s, we're never done creating, but we're most likely to burn out with workaholism, and money continues to have a lot of power and control over our lives.
As a fellow Enneagram 3 wing 2, I can just say all of that tracks so much for me.
And I didn't even know your type. So I'm like, I don't know if this is going to resonate. And you're like, well, crud, we're both the same.
Well, crud, we're the same. I'm actually not that surprised.
Yeah.
But yes, this resonates so much for me. And this is so, so fascinating. So I'm really excited to dive more into your blog and for your book to come out at the
Yeah.
beginning of the year. Now, you mentioned this is your 9th book. So I'm curious, your previous 8 books, have those also been business related books? Have they been fiction passion projects? What kind of writing do you enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've evolved a lot, and that's where I think that the conversation about marketing and vulnerability show up, because my first book was about clinical supervision, very niche down to mental health folks, was not vulnerable at all, was very much like an academic book that's now being used as a textbook. So that tells you something, like it's just
Wow.
very like formulaic. And then I wrote a book about my workaholism and that burnout journey, and that became an Amazon bestseller in 2020. It was just like the perfect timing for people to hear, I don't want to be a workaholic. I don't want to have burnout happen. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Go figure. And that was the first book that I felt like I kind of exposed myself a little bit and said, like, this is my journey. This is what happened. I put myself in a health crisis. My relationship was suffering. And the response to that book was so affirming of like, oh, I can show up authentically and people will resonate with that versus let's stay in my academic lane and be safe.
Yeah.
And so after having the experience with the Perfectioner book, which was the 2020 book, I started writing other books that were related to what I was seeing. So I wrote one on health conditions and professional helpers. I wrote one on mother-daughter estrangement. I wrote one on I wrote a children's book for estrangement. So I just started like kind of allowing myself to go with the flow and showing up authentically. And people were like, wow, like they wanted more. And I was like, okay. So the latest book I just put out is the most heavy book I've ever written, which is How to Heal from Client Suicide as a mental health professional. And so I felt like all 7 of the books before that one were like practice to say, here's my true authentic story of pain and grief and loss. And so far, I mean, it's only been out since June, but so far people are like I feel seen. I feel like you are speaking to me personally. They felt like they could get out of confidential grief. So it's been a really powerful journey. All that to say, the books have spanned all sorts of personal and professional endeavors. I have a cookbook. I have a children's book. I have a lot of academic books for therapists. But the more I lean into my lived experience, the more I think I show up authentically, the more people actually want to read what's coming next. So that's my journey.
Absolutely. Wow. I'm wondering, do you sell a boxed set? Because
no, they're all so different.
So great.
I think like other Enneagram therapists are like, let's just see the whole package deal. I'm not surprised you just said that, Hillary, but I think a lot of people are like, I want the cookbook, but I don't want anything to do with suicide. Or I want, the Enneagram book coming out, but I don't have anything to do with clinical supervision. So our audiences have just kind of moved as I've evolved in my author journey. But like, I think I'm truly addicted to writing. So there's already a book 10 in my mind. There's a fiction book and a play. What is it? A script, a playwright in my mind. But like, just about finding time for one.
Oh, Karen, you are my person. I love this. This is so fun. So, you love writing. And so what has your writing process been like? Because you sound very, very busy. How do you make the time to write 8 books, since you said your first book was published in 2019?
Yeah, so 8 books in 6 years.
Okay. So tell me, how do you make the time for that? Do you write everything yourself? Do you work with a ghostwriter? What's your process been like over the span?
Yeah, I've written everything myself except the first book was with a co-author. So like having that other person. And then of course the Enneagram book has a co-author. So having other people helping flesh it out is really different for me. As a 3, I do everything myself. No surprise. You know exactly what I'm saying as a fellow 3. But, for me, it's been routine. And so we were talking about having 2-year-olds at home. There's routine for them. There's routine for me. And so I was writing every night for a while there from like 8 to 9 p.m. after my daughter went to bed. I talk a lot about like, if you don't schedule it, it doesn't happen. So it's not just, when you have a free moment, because there's never a free moment. It has to be in the calendar. I average a book in about 4 months, which is not normal. It's not a bar to set for people. I think that would stress out a lot of your listeners if they said I have to write a book in 4 months.
Right.
That's been my average for the last 3 or 4 books, but it was like, it's been percolating for a while, been marinating for a while. So it's just about putting it out on paper. Some of your folks might want to spend a weekend and kind of flush out a lot of the content. Others of us, it's just an hour or 2 a day or a weekend and having an hour or 2 each weekend. So for a lot of people, it's like, find your style, find your author voice, and carve out the time, or it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this notion of, there's no one right way to write a book. You just have to find what's your routine, what's your process. Um, so I know that you mentioned each book kind of has a different audience. Have you seen one book do better than the, like, is there one kind of rising star that has been more, there's been more excitement around it than the others?
Yeah, I mean, our first book of clinical supervision, because it's so specific, the audience, it's selling the best because it's narrowed, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, think of the reverse triangle of like upside down
Mm-hmm.
triangle. Our audience is clinicians who want to be supervisors in mental health, right? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
can't get more specific than that. And so that one has a regular purchase rate every month that's pretty predictable. I imagine it will go up as we announce who the person is that's doing this as a textbook, because that's really fun to share.
Yep.
So on one hand, we have that happening. And then with the broadest audience of workaholic entrepreneurial people, which is the 2020 Perfectioner book, that one had the most response, right? So it became a bestseller because people are like, I need this right now. So like timing of marketing, timing of when the book launched in a pandemic probably has something to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
But because that has a broader audience, I think that one also is selling well because people are like, I still know who it's for. It's still specific enough, but it's a much bigger pool than
Right.
mental health people who want to be supervisors. So
Right.
those two books, even though they're so different from each other, seem to be doing really well for marketing reasons because the audience is clear.
Right. And I mean, that's just such a huge, great tenet of marketing. And I think too, the second book, I mean, it's so relatable for so
Yeah.
many people. It's such a relatable topic. Now, I think you mentioned this before we hit the record button. Your first handful of books were self-published. The last three, including the one that's coming out in January, you've been working with a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about the self-publishing process first, and especially, a lot of times I think we think of a book as a marketing tool, but you also have to market a book heavily, right? To get it in front of people and so people know about it and to find the right people. So I'd love to hear you talk about what you did to kind of get your book out there in those initial months as well.
Yeah, so I definitely want to normalize what you alluded to, which is it's a heavy lift to market your book.
Yeah.
It's still a heavy lift with a publisher because you have to fill in the gaps and like there's
Mm-hmm.
like this rush at the beginning to like have it be exciting, but like to maintain and still have people find it is a
Sure.
different arena. So on the self-published journey, I try to normalize this for other therapists because that's a question I get a lot of like, hey, you've written this many books. What have you learned? And I actually now do writing workshops for therapists, which has been really soul-filling for me to be like, here's all the things I know and y'all have a book in you. So like, let's get it out. But on the self-published journey, for a lot of us, it's like you have to have a budget for advertising, for like putting it out on social media regularly. So that could be like a Facebook ad, an Instagram reel, Instagram ad. Are you doing Amazon keywords, which I think is one of the like quickest ways to get your book found is like, what are the keywords people have to put in for it to populate amidst millions of books on Amazon as one example. And so if I had all the money in the world, I'd probably have like a $10,000 a month budget for books. And I don't have that right now.
Who does?
Nor do I plan to right now with all the other things in life, right? But like people are shocked at like how easily you can spend $7,000 on a PR campaign or $10,000 a month in marketing just to have the book found amidst the noise.
Right.
And so that's something we can definitely crack open and say, well, the average self-published author only sells 250 books. And it's probably because of marketing and restrictions to marketing of do I have the bandwidth or the money to make that happen?
So did you do paid ads with your first few books?
I did some A/B testing on Facebook with my books because I was still also talking to like helpers. They're just still my audience, even though that book can go broader. Now I'm not doing a ton of marketing for the older books. I'm really focused on PR campaigns for the books that are coming out. So that's been a different shift for me. And that's amidst having a publisher, right? A publisher is taking them to conferences and sharing them with the audiences. But then I still wanted to like write articles, get on radio and TV and talk about those books depending on the audience. So I've shifted away from ads to PR campaigns, which is a whole different thing for me.
You had also mentioned that you did a TEDx talk. Was this prior to writing any of your books, or had you published a couple of books by the time you got on the TEDx stage?
Yeah, so the TEDx was in 2021. So it was after the first two books had launched. So the
Okay.
Amazon bestseller was the topic of the TEDx,
Mm-hmm.
which was the burden of busyness, work-life balance, work-life harmony. So I think because the book was out there, I don't think it hurt or helped the TEDx, if I'm being honest, because the curators of TEDx are like, we don't want you to sell anything. We want you to inspire people with ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though I'd already formulated it into a book, and which made it that much easier to put on a 8-minute TEDx stage,
Yeah.
they were not like, hey, plug the book. You're not allowed to plug the book. So I think to your point, it added credibility. It opened doors because I had a book behind the TEDx, but people didn't really know they were connected until they did like a dive on me and go, oh, there's a book also with the same kind of concept.
Mm.
Because in the TEDx arena, you don't get to say, hey, I have a book, come buy it.
Right, right. I actually had a conversation recently with someone who did their first TEDx talk in February, and it's been quite an emotional roller coaster since then. I think there were some, high expectations of what the TEDx talk was going to lead to for them, and it just didn't pan out that way. And it's only been a few months. Did you have any sort of similar experience, or what was it like the aftermath, I guess, of being on a TEDx stage?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate to them saying, oh, we thought this is going to be life-changing, right? And so I had worked with a couple coaches. One coach actually like pulled back the curtain and was like, hey, I've actually paid people to like have more views, which then made it go further. And I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So when I did my TEDx, I was 7 months pregnant.
Oh.
So I'm very proud to tell your listeners, like, that itself to me feels like a big deal. It was just being 7 months pregnant and hoping she didn't kick me in the diaphragm while I was talking for 8 minutes. And so, I did my TEDx and then I went right into nesting mode and went into maternity leave. And so for me, my journey is not the journey of other TEDx speakers because I wasn't like posting it everywhere. I wasn't sharing it. I mean, I was very proud of it, but I was going into mom mode. This is my first kid. And so I did not have a lot of movement. I kind of like went away for 3 or 4 months, like didn't talk to anyone as I just became a mother. And so I think to the person you shared with the February launch, a lot of us think, oh, it's going to get like a lot of views. It's going to get all this traction and there's going to be all these doors. And I think having a TEDx has definitely added doors and credibility, but it wasn't immediately after the fact. So maybe that's what this person from the February experience needs to hear is like, it is kind of a slow burn, a slow buildup of like, do you continue to share it? Do you plug it where it's appropriate to plug it? Do people find you? And it's one of the first things on Google that they see about you. All of that matters. But I don't know if it's like immediately overnight, you're getting all these like 10,000 speaking gigs kind of thing.
Right. Do you mind sharing some of the doors that have been opened for you? What are some of the most exciting places that you have been able to speak either about your books or just the topics that you're passionate about?
Yeah, so I've been a public speaker since 2018. I started talking about suicide, so like heaviest topic you could imagine in the space of mental health and how to handle that. And then after the TEDx, I started getting offers to speak with like corporations. One I just did last year was for International Women's Day. They had me come in and talk about burnout and work-life balance for that day. And it was a Fortune 100 company. And so that was like a different audience than I'm used to because I'm used to working with like professional helpers and nurses and doctors and those folks. And this was corporate America. And they were like, tell us how to have work-life balance. And I was like, wow, this feels different to talk to you all. It was fun. I definitely got them to warm up and like open up a little bit, but it had a whole different vibe, even in just how it was scheduled and what they wanted from me. And I was like, I don't know if I'm a corporate speaker. Like, if I'm being honest, like I love working with like soulful helpers who are like, hey, I'm burnt out and I want to help people. And corporate America, there's some like micromanaging in there that was not my favorite, even though the audience was fantastic. The organization of it was like, for me. So it did open some doors. I loved being able to like really refine who I wanted to work with and like get clear who my audience was going to be from here. So having corporate America be a part of that added some clarity.
Absolutely. Yeah. I imagine there's a lot of things that, employees in that space, they don't have as much control over. Right.
That's right.
And you as a helper too, you don't have control over as well. So I can see how that would be very, very challenging.
Yeah. They're like, how do we have better work-life balance? I'm like, can I talk to your managers? Like, how am I supposed to help you here if you don't work for yourself? Like, I've worked
Right.
for myself for 10 years. And so
Right.
I recognize how ruined I am and how privileged I am that I don't want to work for anyone else. And so I don't have those same challenges.
Right.
So it's like, how do I help them feel hopeful while also being like, there's not a lot you can do. So very good point on your part, Hillary, that like, there's not much I could say to them that is in their control.
Yeah. I'm a former teacher. And so I also remember even our, department would be telling us have work-life balance, but also
Do all these things.
here's all these things that you have to take care of on time, So yeah, it is very hard to have those conversations. And I think, the people who can change that there are only a few people who can change that. So
That's right.
Now, another thing I'd love to chat with you while I have you, Khara, is talking about kind of the emotionality of marketing and storytelling and marketing and how that really kind of sets you apart and helps you build an audience. I think when we think about marketing financial services, a lot of times that can feel very cold or it can feel very suit and tie like. But, having been in this field for 4 years now, it's really not that way, or it doesn't have to be that way. So I'd love to hear you talk about your experience bringing more of the vulnerability and emotions into your marketing.
Yeah. So because I work with professional helpers, they are their brand, whether they want to be or not. And it makes a lot of them uncomfortable to be like, I am the face of my business. I am the voice of my business. I am the copy on my website.
Yeah.
And so just to break that down for them, being able to say, like, talk to your ideal client the way they want to be spoken to. Like, it's not about the jargon. It's not about the fancy acronyms. It's not about these phrases that feel, in my case, very clinical, right? Because I work in mental health and financial therapy. And so coaching people to be like, how would they want to be spoken to? What phrase, what language would they want to hear? What kinds of ailments would they go through? So in the business world, they talk about pain points, right? Or like speak to the pain point. Yeah. I'm like, great. Now translate it to what would the client actually say if they were sitting across from you? Would they say, I'm depressed? Or would they say, I can't get out of bed? Right? Those have like different feels for me as a clinician. Would they say, I'm in anxiety? Or would they say, I get really agitated every time we talk about money at the dinner table? So like, we really want to make it personable. We want it to speak to the experience the person is having.
Yep.
And I think that was a light bulb for a lot of people in my industry, is to go away from, hey, I have this many letters after my name, to here's what I can do for you as my potential client. Yep. And that has shifted a lot of things in financial therapy and mental health therapy and all the places that I work right now.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, I'm thinking too of some of the financial advisors I've worked with who are wanting to talk about, well, here's what you do with your 401k after you leave the workforce. But really what they should be talking about, here's how you know if you're going to be okay, right? If you're going to be able to financially support yourself for the next 30 years or so. And I think that that is just such a powerful shift in marketing, is to drill down into the actual experiences that people are going through, instead of just kind of the top surface level clinical terms, which I really liked that you used that phrase. I think that that can be applied to lots of different industries, the mental health industry for sure. But I think it also can apply to things like the financial industry and others as well.
Yes, definitely. And I was thinking as you were saying that about a word association that I do with clients, so therapists who are in financial therapy, that I think applies to financial professionals, which is, what words bring up emotion for them? Like, is there a word that's off-putting that makes them angry? So like you said the word retirement a few minutes ago, and I was like, my clients are like shoulders to ears when they hear the word retirement, because they don't think they can retire. Right. So is it now about describing what it would look like, what they would do if they were retired? Is it a phrase now instead of the word retirement? Is it about the essence of what that would open for them in their life to be retired? On the flip side, as an entrepreneur and type 3 Enneagram person, like, retirement gives me anxiety. So like, maybe I don't even want to think about retirement, because retirement to me means I'm dying.
Right. Right.
So just this word association of words like savings, wealth, credit card, debt, I think that could be something that would really allow financial professionals to say what words resonate with our audience and which ones are actually off-putting when it comes to marketing.
Right, right. I've heard a lot of financial professionals, financial coaches in particular, talk about how the word budget is actually they feel it's very off-putting
Very
to
much.
their potential clients. So what can we use instead, so that we're not using the B word? As
Yeah, yeah.
we like
We
to
say
say.
budget is a bad word in
Yeah,
financial therapy. So, yep, you've heard that too.
yes, absolutely. This actually got me thinking, and this is probably getting a little too in the weeds, but I think sometimes, especially for people who serve business owners in particular, kind of imagining what are their Enneagram types as well, and what might that say about what causes them to tense up shoulders to ears. I think it's very untrue. You just brought up Enneagram type as an Enneagram type 3. The word retirement is something that's like, oh,
Yeah.
right. I don't necessarily think I ever want to retire in the traditional sense, or whatever those associations might be. So that can be another way to even get a little bit deeper with who it is that you're serving as well.
I love that. Yeah, because if you're talking to an Enneagram 6, which I know you and I happen to be the same type, but we talked about like what would other types do?
Hmm.
I'm married to a 6. And so the Enneagram 6 is loyalist, which means they're already kind of thinking ahead with anxiety as to what could happen. So
Mm-hmm.
they're really good financially at like forecasting to be like, this is what I think is going to happen in my future. So they're a great person to have, but like speaking to their anxiety, speaking to the glass is not half empty or half full, the glass is going to break could be really interesting in marketing, right? Because they're always kind of looking ahead and they're like, I'm prepared for the worst case scenario. I'm prepared for the crisis,
Right.
which makes them a really interesting person to be married to as a 3 and a 6, right? It's like that's a whole thing to unpack somewhere else. But like to your point, I do see a future training in my future where I'm talking about the Enneagram as it relates to money conversations, as it relates to marketing, as it relates to leadership. Because if you're not speaking to that person in a way that resonates with them, it's not going to be effective. It's not going to land.
Right. I know. I almost think about when we're talking about this, like it's amazing that we put out content that resonates at all, because I think you can get so granular with it and so in the weeds. But if you're thinking about it strategically, it can still be very powerful.
Yeah, because we want people to feel like they're being seen and heard. I
Yeah.
mean, in the mental health space, I feel like you can work with me. I feel like you're giving me hope. You're speaking my language. Same for
Right.
financial therapy from this lens of money is emotional.
Right.
And so, regardless, I think the financial space and the mental health space, which now intersects in financial therapy, which is so
Yeah.
cool, is speaking from the heart. Like, we got to speak to the pain points. We have to speak with emotion. It's not just tell me what your KPIs are and that you want to retire and that you want this much in the bank. Like,
Yeah.
there's so much emotions in the way of those conversations that we have
Mhm.
to speak to the emotion first.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Well, Khara, as we start to wrap up here, we've talked about writing books. We've talked about, marketing with emotions kind of top of mind. We've talked about all these different things. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about yet that you think is pertinent to our conversation, or anything that you just like to circle back to before we kind of round out?
Yeah, I mean, I think in my journey, telling story has been really important for marketing. And so that's something I just want to like highlight here as we're wrapping up. For me, I've been thinking about this recently because I'm about to do a keynote speaking gig in my community. And it feels almost more important than the TEDx, which is funny to say on this podcast because these are my people. These are the people I want to serve. These are the people I identify with. This is a community I belong to. So
Mm.
it feels like the stakes are higher as I write this speech, for lack of
Mhm.
a better word. And so the power of story of like, does this add credibility? Does this add trust? Does this tell people why they picked me to speak on this particular topic?
Mm.
So story for financial professionals, story in marketing, I think is really important. The first time I was vulnerable in story was 2019. I had to do a pitch to entrepreneurs and it was on suicide prevention. And I was like, I cannot not be emotional about this. Like, this is not
Mm.
point A to point B. It was like, this is why this is important kind of
Right.
language. And I allowed myself to be vulnerable in that setting with 100 entrepreneurs. And I won this pitch contest that we were doing because they were like, I remember you. I
Wow.
remember what you said because you made me feel a certain way as I heard you speaking. And so that's what I want this audience to consider is like, story isn't just like, let me be vulnerable and like bleed out in front of all of you, but like, are they going to remember you? They're going
Right.
to remember story. So how can you incorporate that into your marketing in authentic ways with integrity? Not manipulation, not I just want to make you cry, but because story is what people remember.
Right. Oh, I think that's so powerful. What a great note to end on. So thank you so much for that. If people want to find you or get in touch with you, where's the best place or places that they can do that?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Khara Crossway. It's my first of two last names because I have a long last name. My website has all of my entrepreneurial endeavors, so I like to like call that out if someone lands there to be like, oh my gosh, there's so much here. So the books are there, the courses are there, the trainings I do, the groups I do, financial therapy is there. So depending on who's listening and if there's something I can support you with, that is where you find me, is my website.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Khara. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate you sharing your time with me today.
Thank you. I can't wait to see what people think of all the things we covered.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. If you're eager to market your business in a way that feels good and actually gets results, sign up for the Finance Marketing Podcast newsletter in the show notes so you never miss another episode. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening app and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you back here next Friday.